US emerges as India's biggest trading partner in FY23 at $128.55 billion.
Here's a summary of the article.
The bilateral trade between India and the US increased by 7.65% to $128.55 billion in 2022-23 as against $119.5 billion in 2021-22, according to the provisional data of the Commerce Ministry, reported news agency PTI. It was $80.51 billion in 2020-21. Exports to the US rose by 2.81% to $78.31 billion in 2022-23 as against $76.18 billion in 2021-22, while imports grew by about 16% to $50.24 billion, the data showed. During 2022-23, India's two-way commerce with China declined by about 1.5% to $113.83 billion as against $115.42 billion in 2021-22. Exports to China dipped by about 28% to $15.32 billion in 2022-23, while imports rose by 4.16% to $98.51 billion in the last fiscal. Trade gap widened to $83.2 billion in the last fiscal as against $72.91 billion in 2021-22. In 2022-23, India had a trade surplus of $28 billion with the US. The data showed that China was India's top trading partner since 2013-14 till 2017-18 and also in 2020-21. In 2022-23, the UAE with $76.16 billion was the third largest trading partner of India.
This post received a score of 6,800, with an upvote ratio of 96%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
Greater than exports to the U.S. rose by 2.81% to $78.31 billion in 2022-23 as against $76.18 billion in 2021-22. While imports grew by about 16% to $50.24 billion, the data showed. Exports to China dipped by about 28% to $15.32 billion in 2022-23, while imports rose by 4.16% to $98.51 billion in the last fiscal. Trade gap widened to $83.2 billion in the last fiscal as against $72.91 billion in 2021-22. The real headline is why exports to China plunged by 28%. Damn.
That's a very big trade deficit there, at $80 billion.
US gets its meds from India. Big Pharma $.
As a sailor, I see plenty containers from India, loaded with hazardous base chemicals, industrial gases and steel too. Maersk itself has 26 sailings from Mumbai per month, with at least 2 ships per week, sailing direct to USEC.
We're living in very interesting times.
I think you got your comment stolen by a bot. Lol. Check out you, Grossman47. They just take one of the top comments on Threads and repost it elsewhere to farm karma.
Seen this happening past couple weeks now on multiple threads.
In related news, US emerges as China's biggest trading partner in FY23 at $582.8 billion.
What is this? The world's biggest economy or something?
India has massively increased their oil product exports.
It doesn't look like oil makes up a huge portion of the trade. Based on that link, the US imports about 50 to 100k barrels of oil per day depending on the month. At $80 per barrel, we're talking about $2 minus $3 billion over the year. So it's probably not the biggest driver of trade between the US and India.
Also keep in mind the US is one of the major oil refiners for the world. We are a net exporter of oil. Much of what we import is refined and then sent back out.
Wonder if this includes outsourcing like IT services? India is huge there.
There is an effort to move iPhone and similar kinds of production out of China and at least partly to India.
It's all from the Indian movies on Netflix, right? India is once again playing the profitable role of the middleman. They get imports from Russia or China, and then sell to the US, Europe.
Better for us to trade with India than Russia and China.
Does that take into account their Russian oil purchases?
Let's make this exceedingly clear. Anyone in the comments who accuses India of siding with evil Russia either ignorantly or conveniently forgets that Russia has supported India in its post-colonial era far longer than any power in the West has. The West was actively courting Pakistan for the majority of the last 70 years, and has only recently changed its tune to support India over Pakistan. So obviously the relationship between Russia and India is stronger than India's relationship with the West.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.